Thank you. Mr. Vasquez, pertaining to Governor Schwarzenegger's Open Government Directive S-2009 calling for open government and transparency, what will you do to promote open government and ensure transparency in Solano County?
Well, I think we're doing that right now. The fact that you can go online and watch the board meetings as they're happening. You can go back, and they're televised also. If you have a question, I've never seen the tax collector or the auditor or the assessor or the sheriff not try to deal with your answer. With your question to get you an answer. Obviously, county government is very complex, and it's not to say that the everyday person can't figure it out, but it is. There's different. The way we account for things is entirely different than you and I would do at home. It's very complex. You have to account for money coming in, money being appropriated, money going out, and our budget is really sometimes what they call double counts. So it's hard for the average person, but we're trying as hard as we can to make it transparent. And certainly anytime there's a question about it to me, I get the appropriate people to answer that question. And it changes all the time given regulations that come down from the state, mandates as to how you're supposed to report money, how it's supposed to be accounted for. There's a lot of work that goes into it.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Mr. Pippo, pertaining to Governor Schwarzenegger's Open Government Directive S-2009 calling for open government and transparency, what will you do to promote open government and ensure transparency in Solano County?
Well, I could say that, like the governor told us before he was elected, I'm going to get in office in Sacramento and I'm going to blow up all the boxes, remember? And what did he do? He hired more people. He brought the essence of global warming to the bane of business and agriculture to kill jobs. He's done an absolutely deplorable job. Transparency, is transparency trying to figure out if the county administrator gets reevaluated every so often, and if you know that the evaluation forms by the supervisors were given to the chairman months ago, and the county administrator was supposed to be evaluated in December, and you know that some of the supervisors sent those forms to Mr. Vasquez, and some of them weren't favorable of the county administrator, but what did he do? He gave them to the county administrator, and no evaluation of the county administrator or the county council has happened, and it's almost a year past when it was supposed to be evaluated. What happened? I don't know. Is that transparency? Do we really know what's going on with the Fairgrounds project where they invested $5 million of general fund monies to do this really risky land development deal? Do we really know why Mr. Chairman has a lot of big campaign contributions by the developers of Lower Green Valley, and they were given a gift of $1.5 million of public funds to do the development plan for that development, including the Masons who are in the audience, who donated heavily to my opponent? Is that transparency? There's always an ulterior motive with the current 3 members of the board.
Thank you. Mr. Pippo, while the supervisors were approving $1 million for art in the jails, they were cutting $20,000 to print and deliver to the Solano County citizens the grand jury report. If you get elected, will you reinstate the delivery of the grand jury report to the Solano citizens?
You failed to mention the totem pole at Lake Solano Park. I believe that was $40,000 because it was some more art in the county. And I believe the grand jury report, after all the grand jury foremen, I see one in the audience, attended the board meeting and were severely berated by Mr. Sperian, who had an accidental spending of City of Suisun credit card money in Las Vegas, and he said, oops, and he rushed in and paid back the money. But he chastised the grand jury for doing that kind of investigation. The incumbent severely chastised the grand jurors, and then, as an act of retribution, cut the publication of the grand jury report so you don't see it in the paper anymore. They saved $20,000, which means that they could have put up 1.5 totem poles at Lake Solano instead of just 140,000. They saved 20,000 doing that. No, this is ridiculous. Just totally ridiculous.
Thank you, Mr. Pippo. Mr. Vasquez, while the supervisors were approving $1 million for art in the jails, they were cutting $20,000 to print and deliver to the Solano County citizens the grand jury report. If you get elected, will you reinstate the delivery of the grand jury report to the Solano citizens?
Well, the grand jury has its own budget, and then they can decide how they want to spend that money. All we asked for the grand jury is we gave them a status quo budget. We didn't cut them. They were requesting additional money. They can appropriate the money where they want to, and if they want to produce that document, they can. The public art ordinance has been in place since, I think, 2004, and what it says is part of every project there will be some public art. It's not money that can be used anyplace else other than the building of the building. It comes out of the capital facility fees. And so you can't take that money and put it in another pot. It's not set up to do that. So if you chose not to do the public art, I guess those artisans that live and work in Solano County wouldn't get that work. And every time we've had a proposal for public art, there's been somewhere between 20 and 25 people who live and work in Solano County applying to do that work.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Your question: the county has paid lobbyists at the federal and state level. Congressman Garamendi, Congressman Miller, State Senator Wolk, and Assemblywomen all have offices in Solano County. To save taxpayers' money, would you consider canceling the lobbyist contracts that the county has?
No, I wouldn't, because it's more than just meeting with either your local electeds or your federal electeds. It's getting into the offices of the people who make decisions, the bureaucrats and the technocrats, to talk about your issues. And if you look, I'll give you one example. The airport itself, the county has invested nearly $8 million. It's a loan, much like the loan to Middle Green Valley, much like the loan to the fair for the 360 project. Those are all loans against the general fund that will be paid back. But in this case, the airport, we got to see people who make those kinds of decisions, who say where those appropriations end up being. And because we've done that, we've gotten nearly $4 million of that $8 million we've invested in the airport back.
Thank you. Mr. Pippo, the county has paid lobbyists at the federal and state level. Congressman Garamendi, Congressman Miller, State Senator Wolk, and Assemblywomen all have offices in Solano County. To save taxpayers' money, would you consider canceling the lobbyist contracts that we have in Solano County?
You know, even though we do spend tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on lobbyists a year, our board still finds it necessary to take 1, 2, 3 trips, junkets, back to Washington, D.C. And I looked at one of the supervisors' reimbursements for travel expenses, happened to be the incumbent because I'm kind of interested in that. And it was, one pay period was $14,000 for travel and business expenses and meals and lodging. $14,000 for travel trips to LA, travel trips to Washington. Go look it up. See where he stayed, what hotels they were. They weren't a Motel 6, I'll tell you that much. They were hundreds of dollars a night. You don't have it both ways. If you're going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to lobbyists, save the taxpayer money and stay home. You don't need to go back there. You're paying somebody to represent you. And furthermore, our legislators, our state legislators have aides coming out their ears. What's wrong with one of those aides coming to the board meeting and relaying information the board has to the state legislator or to the federal legislator? I'm sure Mr. Miller must have several aides. I know one of them. Why can't they attend your board meeting and take the message back to the state and federal official? Why do we have to pay hundreds, and maybe millions of dollars, I'm sure, for lobbyists and consultants? That really irritates me. Lobbyists and consultants eat up millions of dollars of your tax money. You got to take a hard look at them and you got to get rid of them.